All right. Hello, everyone. Just wanted to welcome you all. This is Al and Charles's first take on what is it, week 9 of NFL.
Week 9.
So, this is my good friend Alex. I've known him for 20 years, fantasy expert and very knowledgeable about the NFL. Self anointed sharpest mind in point spread betting in the NFL. But we can talk about that later.
It's embarrassing that you've told everybody that already, but it's true. I admit it.
You had a good year last year.
No, it was a good one. We got to catch up this year a little bit. This year's tough with the so many crazy things going on.
Yeah, it's a little catch up. We'll get there though. So let's I'm gonna share my screen out and we'll run through the slate. We'll try to keep it to like 10 or 15 minutes if we can. Try to keep it going. So I filtered on NFL here, so everybody should be able to see the pick sheet, which is kind of in the middle of the picks menu at the top there, if you're on desktop. Filtered on NFL, you can see like the past performance for the last kind of 30 days for the NFL has been kind of pretty poor for the A's, really. And it seems like the middle has kind of done well. You know, what we try to do is kind of pick out the A's that we like for the most part. I think we're a little above 500, maybe 500 for those picks, the premium picks. But, you know, we've actually been doing a lot better for college football. But that's why we have you, Al, so you can help us with it. Sort through the mess of NFL.
We'll do it. Let's do it, brother.
All right. So at the top here, we got Ravens, Colts. Just a couple B's here, a few B's. Probably just skip through that one, maybe. Next one on the.
Just sorry to interrupt you, but do you want to start with the A's and maybe come back to the sheet?
Sure.
That might be a good place to start. Because we'll talk through some of the top picks that Spread Knowledge has found and, you know, how best for everyone who is watching to analyze those as well as sort of get our take on them.
Yeah, makes sense. So I moved to the top picks page. So here, do you want to change the odds so we kind of just look at a certain price type, like near even and underdog odds or something?
I think we can leave it for now.
Leave it? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
It kind of filters some of the heavy favorites, but that's cool. So
yeah, that's okay. I think you want to just make sure we're on just Sunday. We're just going to look at week 9. So go up to the. Yeah. This is a good thing for everyone to know too.
Yeah.
That's helpful to make sure you're just not seeing too many of the games that are in advance and might not have as much data to support the grade quite yet.
Yeah. That's good. So now we just got November 8th tomorrow.
Good.
So we got 1A plus, the Chiefs. Do you want to chat over that one in the matchup or?
No, I think that one's very straightforward. I mean, it's not the world's greatest price, but it's a heavy favorite. But I think that game is quite interesting when we get to the pick sheet, just because Carolina is plus 10.5, which is a lot. Christian McCaffrey, I think, is back. And, you know, Teddy Bridgewater has been excellent at covering spreads in his career. So that's something, I mean, he may be 74, 75% covering spreads. So that may be something for us to look at the pick sheet. But here, I still think the Chiefs to win is good, but this price is probably not where we would be interested in investing a lot in at this price. But it obviously makes sense. I like the next one a lot more. So I like Minnesota to win here a ton. I like them to cover. We'll get to that in the matchup spreads. I think this is a very fair price. It's not, and I think it's important when we look at A's and we see a price here of minus 200, as bettors, we might feel like, hey, that's not maybe the best ROI in the world, but this is a very, very strong play. Detroit's in a really tough spot here. They don't have Galladay. Stafford earlier in the week was looking like he might not play. I think he will. He got a COVID designation, but it looks like he's been testing negative. But even if he plays, I like it all the way here for Minnesota. They're going to run the ball strong. There's a lot of injuries, and I think that Detroit's in a really tough spot here. So that one I feel very good about.
Next one, the Saints.
Yeah, so yeah, I think this one's very interesting because we'll get to Saints and Bucks in the pick sheet as well. So I think it's a good price. So I think the value at plus 180 here for the Saints is a very good price, and I think that's why we see it as an A. So I don't think we're seeing this as an A saying Saints are going to win the game. I don't think that's what the A is about. I think the A here, obviously there's a lot of data associated with it, but the plus 180 I think is where you're seeing it. Now, a couple of things to consider in this particular game is, one, this is the second time they've played. And the first time the Saints won. So we've got a little bit of a revenge here in game. Two, Breeze tends to perform a bit more poorly on the road, and the Bucks are favored here by I think it's 4.5, or at least it was 4.5 at one point. It's probably about that. So I think there's a lot to unpack in this game, but I think the price here is very reasonable. But I happen to like the other side of the ball. I happen to like the Bucks here to perform better than they did both against the Saints and in their last game where they performed poorly. So, it's actually kind of a double bounce back here for the Bucks. So I would tend to lean that direction. But obviously, I think this is a very, very fair price, and there's value in the price.
Yeah, I know earlier in the week, the machines like the point spread too. Oh, here it is. It's an A too. So
yeah,
like that could easily be a field goal game, right?
I think so. I think it's definitely a tricky one to call. I mean, again, I'm giving a personal opinion on that. I happen to like the other side of it, but at the same time, I like the Bucks to win. I don't think I love the Bucks necessarily to cover. So both of these are squarely in play for sure.
What about
Tennessee? You want to go to Tennessee? Yeah, I mean, I've had a tough time with this one this week. And when I say a tough time, it's been hard for me to feel super strongly about where this game is going. I love Tennessee to win the game. So this is an A I would 100% agree with. Again, though, you're looking at a little bit of a rough price, but certainly we like Tennessee to go. And we'll talk more about that when we get to the pick sheet of why I think that's a little bit of a tricky one when it comes to betting against the spread.
Do you want to touch on the Saints point spread? It looks like they didn't cover the last three.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I mean, that is obviously correct here. We see that. But yeah, I mean, I think this one is one that is an A, and it requires research. I think you got to dig into this one because of some of the factors I mentioned earlier. We don't see Breeze play as well on the road. This is a division game. A second time they see each other, they're going to play each other really tough. So yeah, I certainly can see both sides of it, as we talked about.
How about the Texans Jags under 50? I think we took this on one of the shows this week.
Yeah, I think this is very, very reasonable. I think Houston is in an excellent spot here to score some points, and I think Jacksonville's in a very difficult spot to score some points. So I think you might see a lopsided affair here, and that would tend to lean towards the under. Jacksonville starting a rookie quarterback, so that would suggest they're going to have difficulty scoring points. And Jacksonville has a bottom of the league defense in run and passing, 28th or worse. So you're going to see Houston here light them up. But Jacksonville's been getting lit up all year. I don't see any reason why this would change. So I think under is very reasonable. If the narrative exists that Jacksonville will have a tough time scoring, we might see a 30-10 kind of game here, which is well under. So I like that a lot. Houston to win again. I mean, I just mentioned Houston. Everything about that's about the same. This is about price. So, it's not the world's greatest price, but at the same time, I think Houston's a heavy, heavy favorite. I think that looks to me like very, very solid bet that would easily win. So it's just about what you're willing to risk there.
It looks like the other win that the Texans have, at least recently, is against Jacksonville. Huh.
What was the score there? 30-14. That was almost exactly what I said. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that Jacksonville has, Minshew's not going to be playing. He's been struggling. Their offense has been struggling. And their defense has been worse than struggling. I mean, they're just getting torched up and down the field. So, yeah, you got to like Houston, who is trying to bounce back after the coaching change, trying to save their season. Jacksonville's basically toast. Not mathematically, but I think in reality, we would say that that's probably fairly accurate. So, yeah, I think Houston to win is a slam dunk. And we get to the bets, but I like them to cover all 7 in the, that's a sneak preview of the next section. But yeah, that one seems like a slam dunk. So, yeah, here, I mean, I think Miami's just been such a surprise this year. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. And they're kind of still finding themselves almost,
Yeah, and now they're starting the rookie. He started him last week, so that game had a lot of defensive just scores, special teams scores. So I don't know if we really saw what Miami's offense is going to be all about going forward. But they definitely have a tall task. I think Arizona is starting to catch its stride. So I don't have any issue with this. I would say that for me, I would look at that price and certainly feel like I needed to really dig in a little bit more to say I'd feel great about that one if it was me. It's not a game that I'm interested in this week per se. I think there's so many other spots on the board that I like. And I just sometimes tend to gravitate away from situations like that when I personally don't feel that I know a team or know what that team is about that well. So that's just my take on it. Everybody sort of does it their own way, but Miami to me is still a little bit of a wild card, whereas I think it's very fair to say that Arizona is a better football team. But gosh, Miami has been surprising so far this year.
Yeah, that's a tough one to predict. It seems like definitely a stay away.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel like it's an obvious one to me.
The other thing too, especially with the machine predictions, is I feel like those teams have changed quite a bit in the last year or so, which, when there's more continuity year over year, the predictions can be a bit stronger. But
I think it's a good point. And to just flush that out a little bit, we're seeing a Miami team dramatically outperform what they did last year. So there's a lot of raw data, recent data of Miami that is poor in terms of how they performed on the field. So now the data's got to catch up as they're performing better, but it's still lumping in a lot of this data, recent data, where Miami was just getting, trucked all season long, like we saw in the last 3, 4, or 5 years.
Right. It's different world.
Yeah.
What about this total under 52.5 Lions Vikings?
Well, let's look at the data here. I don't have a strong take on this one. Totals I do find a bit coin flippy, so it's not where I spend a ton of my time researching. But what does our data tell us here? Is there anything we can learn from the data that would suggest? I certainly know we can circle back to I like Minnesota. The issue I have, if Stafford plays, no Galladay, okay, that's not great for Detroit. But Minnesota, for much of this year, has struggled on defense. So it's hard for me to say for sure if neither of these teams are going to be scoring any points here. I mean, we know Minnesota's scoring points, and Detroit has scored points in a lot of its games this year. Minnesota's defense is pretty weak, but it's a very, very rough spot for Detroit, I think, here. So for me, it's not a clear-cut one, but again, totals are not really where I'm focused too much. Is there anything you see here that would swing you to say, this one looks really strong?
One of the things that I like is that both teams had big weeks last week. So you can kind of see last week's totals for both teams. Vikings put up 28 plus 22, 50 points, and the Colts 62. So from a regression standpoint, it seems to fit that, like that it's kind of due to go back to an under. But other than that, this game could get wacky at the end. You don't really know.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have any issue with it. I mean, 52.5 is reasonable to go after and under, but it's hard to say for sure if that's where I want to invest.
So what do you want to do? Do you want to go through some more Bs, or do you want to switch over to the pick card?
Yeah, well, let's see. Is there any Bs in here that we really the Denver Atlanta game? We'll talk about this again briefly in the picks. Is for me a total stay away. Let's see if there's anything else in the Bs here that really stand out. I certainly like Seattle a lot this week, so I think that's one to keep on your radar. I'm yet to be convinced here on the Bills, and I'll admit I made this mistake last year. I wasn't convinced on the Ravens. That one hurt. But I'm not 100% sure. I think Seattle looks super strong. They're tough here. I'm a big fan of Seattle across the board this week.
Cool.
Yeah, I think we get to. I think the pick sheet will cover a lot of this. So let's look at the pick sheet and see if we can give out some of the picks that we're looking at that we like for this week. So I would start. Let's just start at the very top. I'm in Baltimore and the Colts. So this line now is almost pick 'em. This is -1 maybe to the Ravens at this point. It's been moving. Is that what you see?
Yeah, it's about even.
Yeah, it's about even. I mean, a couple of interesting things here. I saw a very interesting stat this week, which is that every single team that's lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers this year has lost the subsequent next game. Isn't that amazing? I thought that was so. I don't know if that means anything, except for if we look at this, the Ravens lost to the Steelers last week, and they would then lose here to the Colts. I don't put too much credence in things like that, but I thought that was quite interesting.
Do the Steelers just beat the living crap out of the guys, and they're like dead the next day?
The Steelers are tough, man. They are tough, but I don't know. It's probably something highly coincidental. Or who knows. For me, I like the B here. I like the Ravens. I think this is a very solid B. I certainly like the Ravens to win. The price is very reasonable. And I am a believer in the ineptitude of Phillip Rivers. Now, I think the Colts have been playing good. I love the defense. It's hard to argue against that. But when this gets down to crunch time, the Ravens have a real defense too. Ravens on a bounce back spot here. For me, I'm very surprised that this line is so close. I see this as a game where the Ravens should be favored by more, even on the road here. And I think the Ravens are due to play a big game against a good football team. And they've struggled against good teams twice this year. They struggled against the Chiefs. They struggled against the Steelers. And I don't even know if the Colts are in that class. I would say probably not. I think they're in a slightly tier 2 to the teams I just mentioned. I think the Ravens, to me, there is value across the board here for the Ravens at the money line and against the spread against the Colts this week.
Yeah, I can see all that happening. What about the next one, Panthers Chiefs?
Yeah, I mean we touched on this briefly. I think that if I would go anywhere, I like that. Obviously, we like the A+. The Chiefs can win. I like the B for the Panthers a lot. I like 10.5 for the Panthers here. Christian McCaffrey's coming back. That's not nothing by any stretch of the imagination. Teddy Bridgewater is historically good at covering spreads here, and there's a lot of points. And I'm not taking anything away from the Chiefs. The Chiefs have been playing amazing. They didn't play a football team. They played the Jets last week. I don't know, you can't call it really a football team, I don't think, but they had a big win there. Okay. So now they come back to reality. They play a team that's going to play them tough. Carolina will play them tough. So I think there's value in the B for sure here. What do you think? Am I going too far? Do you think it's the Chiefs are too strong, or do you think that's reasonable?
No, I think it's reasonable. I mean, I think the Chiefs have been doing well against the point spread this year, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
10 and a half is a lot of points in the NFL. And, Panthers are really trying to get back in the mix. So, I could see it going either way, but the machine sees something with Carolina, so it makes sense.
Yeah, I tend to like the machine here a lot. So, yeah, we'll wait and see. I mean, the Chiefs obviously, score points very, very quickly. They score from anywhere. I mean, these kinds of things can get out of hand pretty quick. But if we see the other side of it, the value on the Chiefs against the spread is worse. Right? I mean, I wouldn't feel great about being on the Chiefs at 10.5 here. I think it's a lot of points. A lot of good points. I'd rather be on the side where I'm getting 10.5 here.
Yeah, you can see from our little win percentage widgets that we like the predicted percentage at 53% for the B and 47% for the C. So it's about a positive 6 points difference in terms of kind of value there. So
yeah, it seems that the machine's got them fairly close, but certainly an edge to the Panthers there.
How about the next one, Bears Titans?
Yeah, this one, like I mentioned earlier, this one is, for me, has been a little bit tricky. So we saw earlier in the week the line move away from what was it? I think it was 6.5, and then it went down to 5.5, and now it looks to be back up 6.5. Titans are a favorite. So I wasn't quite sure what to make of all of that. To be honest, I think the reason that I hesitate is the Bears have been sort of confounding. I don't know how. The Bears have a great defense. The struggles they have on offense is not news. This is not something that I figured out on my own. Everybody has been watching and looking at the stats. The Bears are really, really struggling here. I love Tennessee to win the game. Okay, that straight up, I love Tennessee to win the game. They're coming off a pretty rough loss, and they're due for a bounce back at home. So the A here, I think I like a lot. When it comes to the spread, Chicago's been blowing up spreads all year long. So that's why I get a little bit hesitant, just because they have been somehow finding a way. But the last game they had was the Rams. I think was the most recent game, and they didn't perform very well there. So I'm not a huge fan of either of these spreads per se, but I do love the money line for Tennessee.
Yeah, money line's good. It's got a 74% chance to win, but it's also kind of got a rough price there. But
yeah, it does. It does have a rough price. I mean, when we look at the value, let's look at the grades here. We have X's on both of these beads. And maybe just explain what that might mean if somebody who has never seen those X's before.
So basically what that means is both of these picks have been relatively profitable in this position. So in order to get a grade of B, you have to be pretty profitable in that type of position. So both of these have Bs, so they're both profitable. And because of that, we designate that with a red X, which means no action. So basically just avoid it.
Yeah, so I think that the machine and I think are in agreement here. Just kind of want to stay away, but the price is a little rough on Tennessee here, but I think they're in a really good spot to win here for sure.
Okay.
Denver, Atlanta for me is a total stay away. I think these teams are so wacky. Atlanta's found a way to lose insanely huge leads this year. I don't know how they get this favorite tag. I don't know how that happened, but I'm not willing to put any dollars on the fact that I think that favorite tag is a little bit egregious, but there it is. And I don't think we see any grades here that would suggest anything that, those seem reasonable. Those Bs are okay. I mean, that's fair, but I'm not sure I see too much that I'm in love with there.
Let's move on to the next one. Lions, Vikings.
Love it. Now the under we talked about, and that one, it wasn't quite as clear to me, but the A for Minnesota is very strong. I think for me, I think the spread here is pretty reasonable too. Now we have it as a C, so that may be something that everyone should be doing further research on. Everyone should be doing further research on any of these, but maybe that one is a little bit of more, not necessarily what we see within the recent history and the data, but more of our personal research and take on any one situation. But I'd be very comfortable with obviously the A, and I'd be comfortable with Minnesota -4 as well.
Yeah, so you like kind of everything on this right side, right?
Sure, everything there. Again, the under, like I said, is not my forte per se. I think it's very reasonable. It's a high number, 52.5. So I think that's reasonable, sure.
Okay. Texans, Jags.
Yeah, we talked a bit about this one. I like Houston definitely to win, no question about it. I like Houston to cover the 7 points. I think they cover it pretty easily. I think this is a 10-point margin at least. Jacksonville is going to have struggled to score here. Rookie quarterback. Houston is fresh and ready to go here. I like Houston really across the board. And the under, we like the under in this game as well. So there's a lot to like in this spot. We've got 2 A's in this game, and then the Houston is -7 is a C. But for me, I think that's a very reasonable C there.
Yeah, it could be that historically the Texans have just kind of underperformed at this -7 number, which is why you're seeing a C here. Because a lot of times it's it's all situational based trends. So
yeah, I think that makes sense. It could very easily be something like that. And
yeah.
I mean, the other thing that this can't capture is that Jacksonville's starting a rookie quarterback. It can't capture that. So we have to understand that and know and say, okay, let's say for the sake of argument, sometimes when I look at it, I go, okay, Jacksonville's starting a rookie quarterback. What would that grade be if it could understand that? Well, it would be a C+ or a B+, or it would be something improved to what it is right now. And I think that's fair.
Right. Absolutely. So toilet bowl game of the week, Giants, Reds.
You say toilet bowl? I was going to say dumpster fire. But that's close. I think we're about the same, in the same ballpark. Yeah, I mean, happy to look at any of this with you. I really looked at this game and did zero research. I have no interest in it whatsoever. This is going to be garbage. So I'm not sure I see where the value is, but if you want to look at it, I'm happy to do that. If you're seeing something I'm missing, please tell me, but I didn't look at this one closely at all.
No, the machine seemed to like Washington. Not really sure why, but be interesting to see what the result is. And machines are often right.
Yeah. Well, who's at home in that game? Washington at home?
Washington.
Yeah, so I think that's probably what you're seeing. I mean, we know that the home away advantage this year is certainly diminished of what we would see in a normal season. But I think that may be the trending that is giving some of those better grades to Washington being a home team, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good point. They're probably getting a little bump from being the home team that maybe they don't deserve.
Maybe. I mean, the game's a total toss-up. I mean, it's like, who knows? I mean, who knows which one of those horrible football teams is going to win that game and by how many points? I mean, it's so hard to invest in something like that.
Yep. Seahawks, Bills.
Yeah, so this one I'm on the other side of the, at least for the spread, I'm on the Seattle side of this one. So, I think it's very very reasonable to debate that, because that's a personal take of mine. in the work that I'm doing, the research I'm doing, but I certainly like Seattle on the money line. But it looks to me like the machines here sort of X both of these for the money line. What do you think's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably both of these money lines have been pretty profitable, certainly of late. And
Yeah.
you're seeing that, both of these are basically profitable picks week in and week out, and you got to just stay away.
Yeah, and I wouldn't fault anybody for taking that over on the B.
Yeah.
I could see that. I mean, again, I'm not total expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that's very reasonable. That grade seems in line. This game could easily have a ton of points in it. And Seattle in the air is going to be impossible to stop for just about every team this year. So they can score points really quickly. And I think what you will see out of Seattle too is even with all the injuries, they're going to be able to run the ball. I think they're going to be able to run the ball. And Seattle's defense is the only thing holding them back from being sort of unstoppable. So you can score points on Seattle.
Yeah, it was my entertainment pick of the week, the over 55.
Nice.
I mean, it's entertaining to root for scoring,
Yeah, sure. No, I think that's reasonable. I think that B is fair. I do.
So Raiders, Chargers, this is a weird one.
My nemesis, the Chargers. I mean, honestly, I don't know if anybody would, of course, know this or not, but as we do this together, generally have a rule and we don't put anything invested in the Chargers. Every time I break this rule, I lose.
Yeah.
And it's hilariously ridiculous, but the Chargers find a way to do Charger things, and we've all seen it. Anybody who's watched football, missed field goals, wacky special teams plays. The game last week, 21 points they were down. No, they were up and lost rather. So I steer clear of Chargers, and not only that, I think these two teams are pretty difficult to predict, and we don't see any grades here that would suggest otherwise.
Yeah, steer clear.
Yeah.
The machines are even saying to lay off both sides of the total because it's so wacky.
Yeah, it's just a wacky one.
This one's kind of wacky too, right? We said that Dolphins Cardinals is like.
Yeah, I think you can certainly have confidence in the A. Price isn't amazing by any stretch, but I think Arizona to win the game is strong. But hard to know what kind of Miami we're going to see, and it's hard to know which one of these spreads or totals is going to be correct. So I steer clear of those.
Steelers Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on your appetite for points, right? So Pittsburgh, is going to win, and that doesn't have a good grade because the price is minus 1250. So, okay, so we don't want to go to the money line. Totals pretty low. We don't see anything amazing. Now the total's low and machines like the under at 43. But here, in terms of the game, it's really just, are you comfortable laying 14.5 with the Steelers? That's really what it comes down to. Dallas has not covered a spread in a generation, I think. It's been so long since they covered a spread, I'm not sure how many games it goes back. I think it goes back at least 5 or 6 games of last year and all of this year. Maybe they covered one in that stretch. It's like, I don't know how Dallas covers this, but it does feel a little rough to give that many points.
I think Dallas covered a spread back in maybe biblical times.
Yeah, that's right. That's sometime around there. I mean, last week I gave the Chiefs. I took the Chiefs at minus 19. It was the Jets. I mean, are the Cowboys that different than the Jets? I'm not sure they're that different. They're different, but they have talent on that team that the Jets just don't. But yeah, that team is a dumpster fire, and the Steelers are arguably the best team in football. So this margin is very, very reasonable to expect them to cover 2 touchdowns. more than 2 touchdowns just feels a little rough. So it's not in my sort of bailiwick of picks this week, but I get it.
Yeah. If you're objective about it, they probably cover the 14.5.
Yeah, and if you got it under 14, I don't know if you could have. I think it opened at 14. Certainly, if it opened anywhere under 14 and you picked it up, then I think you got a ton of value because, yeah, this one's going to be a route. The thing you worry about in games like this really actually has a lot to do with game flow. So if the Steelers get up big and they stop pressing, and then a weird 3 and out in the fourth quarter, and then a garbage time. Garbage time score from Dallas because the game's well out of hand. These kinds of things, really do vary spreads. As I'm sure everyone's well aware of that, but that's kind of what I sometimes have a little hesitation here. But objectively speaking, yeah, the Steelers are going to crush here.
Yeah,
for sure.
And our last one here, Saints Bucks.
Yeah, so we talked a lot about this already, but look, I happen to like the Bucks for a number of specific reasons having to do with things I like to look at, which are sort of like the spots teams are in. Things for me that has been the most successful is finding the spot the team is in, and using that to predict how this game is going to go. So here, I like the Bucks spot, but I can very much understand both of the A's on this board. And what I like the Bucks to win the game. So if I were to take anything here for me, but I also understand very much the A's in the New Orleans to cover, and the value with the A in New Orleans to win. I think New Orleans to win as a pick alone, without that price, or in other words, for a worse price, I would be pretty hesitant on that. I don't like New Orleans to win this game. But at that price, it's very reasonable that they could. It's a close look. It's only 4.5 points in a spread here. So the game is going to probably be close. But again, I think the second time they're playing, I think the Saints won the first round. Now the Bucks are playing at home, and Breeze does struggle to play on the road. I think there's a lot of reasons why you might be a little hesitant to maybe call these a slam dunk. So those are just some of the points to consider. The other thing I thought, which is interesting about this game, which we didn't touch, is the over. So I think that this is interesting because the Saints have gone over. And maybe, I don't know if we could look that up. I don't know the exact number, but the Saints have gone over almost every game they've played. So that's an interesting trend to think about and research. Is that, yeah. I mean,
every game.
Yeah, so that's a very interesting trend that I thought was worth noting. And it's interesting because while I think that I like that this total at 50 does feel low to me, so I like it, but it's also a bit contradictory to what I've already said, which is the Saints and Breeze struggle a bit to play on the road. And Tampa Bay's defense is really strong, and they still struggle in pass coverage. But this is something the Bucs have struggled with for a really long time. They're getting better. Their run defense is really strong. So you could easily see a situation where Breeze performs well enough to put points on the board. And then if that's the case, I think this goes way over. And the Bucs are going to scoring. Brady's going to be going ham on these guys. He's not losing to the Saints twice without a real fight. It's just not the way this dude operates. And the supporting cast for the Bucs is legit. I mean, they're a top 10, easily top 10 team in the league, and a lot of pundits would argue that they're even higher than that because they can play on both sides of the ball. And their last performance, again, let's think about the spot. The last time they played the Giants like donkeys. They played a terrible team. They didn't rise. They let the poorer team bring their play down. And they probably had a week in practice as if they lost. That's probably how that went. So they're coming off, like, think about it. That's how I see it. They're coming off a loss to play the Saints, a division game at home. They lost to the Saints last time. You know, that for me helps drive some sort of my thinking when maybe we're on the margin. It's not quite clear where to go.
Yeah, it all makes sense. This could be a tough match for sure. I mean, this trend is impressive. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, and these trends always sort of make me nervous, right? Like, this looks like you can get caught in the hot hand fallacy, right? This is everything that's sort of happened in the future is then going to happen in the past is not going to happen in the future. The regression is coming. It's just when. When is the regression will happen? We know it always does, but when is that coming? So is it this game? You never know, maybe. But gosh, I kind of feel like, you know, I know I've been speaking and talking about the Bucs, but that doesn't mean the Saints can't score points and aren't a really good football team. And those things are true. So would this game, the line to me at 50 stood out. I stood out. I said, you know, this trend has been happening. All these things I've been mentioning about these two teams, I believe to be true. And now this number, gosh, it feels a little low. Doesn't it feel just a hair? I mean, if that opened at 53, wouldn't you go, yeah, that's about right?
Yeah.
You know, you go, yeah, that's about right. So this is here 50. I went, you know, So yeah, I know that one's not a high grade per se here as a C for this week, but certainly worth a consideration for those reasons.
Yeah, I would say it's at least maybe a field goal under price there, maybe 53, 54. You know, these teams can put up a lot of points. I guess it depends on how much the defenses play.
Yeah, I mean, the other trend that we see in division games where it's the second time they've played, and there's a lot of data to support this. The scoring is lower, so we see a bit less scoring. So that may be what's keeping this total down, and that's something to consider because there's a lot of historical data there to support that. So no slam dunks here, but you know, I'm aware of that, and I still feel like, gosh, this feels to me like the value is in the over. This just opened a little bit low for these two teams that really do have offenses that can score points. And if the Saints, this is what will blow up the over is if Breeze comes and does what he does sometimes when he's on the road and just lays an egg. He throws a bunch of picks that, you know, turn into field goals on the other end of it. You know, you're not getting there, but yeah, it's football.
Yeah. Football is football. Do you want to touch on anything else before we wrap up here?
No, I think we covered a lot. Hopefully that was helpful. So yeah, no, I think that's what I've got for now. But anything you have, I'll be happy to, if there was anything you saw or you want to get a take on, I'd be happy to do that. But we maybe have given out a lot of information, so maybe we save some for the next time.
Yeah, no, this was a really good like overview of a few different pages on the site and kind of how we use it today. And I think this will be like wildly helpful to the members who kind of probably use the site all differently today. So, you know, it's great to kind of put it together in a quick kind of format that people can digest. So
that's good. I'm glad. Yeah, I hope the members just, you know, use the grades, follow them, but you know, there's research that needs to be done, understanding why a grade is given a grade. Sometimes it has to do with the trending, sometimes it has to do with the value and the price, and just understanding what you're looking at. It comes pretty naturally once you understand, become easier to use and utilize. So hopefully that's helpful for everyone.
Yeah. So thanks to everyone for watching. Appreciate it. Please provide some feedback if you have it. We're going to try to do this every week together until the end of the NFL season. And, you know, hopefully just help people to understand the application better and hopefully, you know, turn those NFL bets into some good cash. So that's what Alex is good at. That's why he's here.
I'm trying. Well, thanks for having me. Of course, anything I can do to help you and spread knowledge, I'd be more than happy to do. And I look forward to next week and and hopefully we get some good feedback. If there's anything that we can do differently, please share. I'd be happy to include any other pieces of it that maybe some of the users are feeling like they need some more information on. I could do that research during the week and share it next week.
Great. Well, thanks again for joining, and look forward to next week.
Thanks.
See you, everyone.
Bye.